a talk. But what I see another problem, and you can shed some light in there. The difference between, again, here and West and East is, and not China necessarily, but the East in the West is the financial infrastructure that is enabling of some activities like this, like a startup. So it's not foreign for the financial services, the concept of a startup and an idea and a pitch. The process is well thought out, extremely clear to get the rounds of funding for the project or for the team or for the startup to get the project executed and start to show some minimum viable product, and later start to flesh it out and go to the market with some strategy. And some even offer you the service to lead that part of these startups. Like it's a bunch of engineers. They're not going to figure out how to do the financial part. How would it be in the area in the Middle East area?
Yeah. So. I believe now the market is still immature. You're talking about a market that, if we go back to the US, maybe in the early 1900s. So you hear that story that Henry Ford, he wanted some capital, so he approached, I think, 60 banks, and 66 banks maybe, and then the 67th bank gave him the necessary funding to start this factory.
Yeah.
So you kind of wonder, 66 banks, come on, weren't there investors, weren't there VCs back then, and so on? So yeah, but no one believed in companies and businesses and so on. Yeah. And so we're in the same thing. We're still in the early stages, because who has the money? It's either the governments, the traditional businesses, mainly here in, for example, GCC, it's family businesses. So the traditional family businesses, family business offices have the necessary money. So they have on the back they have these traditional businesses in all industrial sectors, maybe pharmaceutical, maybe construction, maybe retail, and so on and so forth. And on top of that, you have the family office. So these have the necessary funds. What's happening now, or traditionally, is that they now have the money. They want to invest that money. Either they invest it in real estate locally, let's say real estate, or they move it abroad and invest in funds in more mature markets like in Europe and the US. Now, until this date, these big names are still not convinced that the startups is a kind of investment for them. Their counterparts from the US are coming here and tell them, you're only getting 5% return, 8% return from the traditional businesses. You can get 10x return, 20x return from startups. So you have to invest in startups. But I think it's still in the early stages, as we see the return on investment going down in the traditional markets, because for example, investing in real estate 30 years ago, maybe it was of like a 5x. I have a 5x ROI on it. Now, investing in real estate, you would be lucky to reach 8%. So it's not now a lucrative investment as it was before. So now
pretty saturated.
Yeah, it's pretty saturated. So now you have the investors, they kind of see, I'm not getting these returns, from other investment vehicles. Let us move to something, at least, a very tiny amount of our funds into funding startups. That's why you now see these local VCs sprouting up. MENA Ventures, MEVP, I think Saudi Venture Capital, so on. So you see all these local VCs who are getting the money from the government as well as from the local family offices, and investing in this investing in startups in the region. And so now these entities are moving the ecosystem. They're moving funding these startups, they're doing these events, they're encouraging students, college students, and so on to think about instead of leaving and going to the US or Europe, staying and building these startups, or getting, of course, employment in traditional jobs. No, why don't you go and do a startup, and we'll see, and we'll fund you, and we'll see. So we see these kind of VCs moving the ball forward, of course, as well as the government, because the government, they provide the funding to the VCs, number one, and then they provide the accelerator programs. For example, they're trying to you have hundreds of accelerators here in every country in the world, from Saudi Arabia to the UAE to Qatar to Kuwait to Oman to Egypt to Jordan to Lebanon. But in 2005, it was still in the nascent stages. So when I was in Lebanon in 2005, we and our university, the American University of Beirut, they took us on a field trip to a VC, which was back then a local bank, that they are investing in startups, and they wanted to give us a session about innovation, in startups, and you have to think about investing your time and money into startups. So we went and attended this session, and it was a Lebanese entrepreneur between brackets engineer. So he was some electrical engineer who left engineering and started a restaurant somewhere in Lebanon, and it took off. So I don't know. So that's the bank's concept of entrepreneurship. So leave and start some restaurant, and you can get funding. You can get funding. You can get a loan from the bank, and we'll give you a low interest rate. So you can start your own business. So that's not the startup ecosystem.
Yeah.
As we used to joke back in college, if we don't make it in technology, we'll open a falafel shop. That's it.
Yeah.
Falafel.
It's because like you said, the ecosystem, the business itself is one of the factors it's comfortable enough for a banker to understand at the time. Like a restaurant versus a technology-based company would be extremely complicated to understand. How does it operate? What's the output? What is the product? What's the return on their investment? How many years they have to invest in it? What's the risk factors? All that, like you said, it's figured out in the West. It's well thought out. It's easy. The questions are very clear to ask, and you know how to begin to prepare an answer. Versus in the region there, especially when you're hunting to a 2005-2006 timeframe, would be extremely foreign, alien to the financial sector in the region.